were you able to get to the root of whether it was like the fear or the shame or the memories that were at the root of your eating disorder or harming yourself? Was it through tapping that you did that or?
It's a really good question. I think these things are always unfolding.
Yeah.
And because that tapping I did was such a long time ago, what I really remember about it was standing in my bathroom naked, looking myself in the eye in the mirror while I did the tapping, which is I really recommend for anything body
Mm.
image related, because
Powerful.
you literally cannot avoid your own gaze. Like you are radically truth telling in
Mhm.
that moment. And mostly what I remember talking about was, like you're saying, the shame and the disgust and the guilt and the sadness that I felt in my body. I don't remember connecting it to anything historical
Mhm.
for me.
Beautiful.
But I think all of these things come from childhood trauma
Mhm.
and old stuff that we've witnessed. And I think realistically, we're all going to be uncovering those things until our last days.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think there's a beauty within tapping where there's a power in going to therapy and excavating and
Right.
going to all the exiled parts and figuring out the stories and figuring out the situations where, for me with eating, where it's like the time when, my parents said this or the time when I witnessed this, and that's really beautiful and powerful. But sometimes it almost reaffirms
Mm,
the situation where you're like, well, my mom said that I'm only valuable if I'm thin, or you
Mhm.
know what I mean? You kind of live in that story and journey. And it
mhm.
is nice with tapping because it's like you kind of, I want to say bypass, but it's not the word. It's like you're kind of just focusing on the belief as like a high level thing to bring it up. And then you're just kind of inputting the new belief rather than
Mhm.
like going in and just going forever in the
Sure.
dark and just like going so into it.
I agree. And to me, tapping is like pulling an emotional thorn from the body. And once you pull the thorn, then everything around it can heal. But as long
Wow.
as the thorn's in there, good luck.
Mhm.
And I think that therapy can be so helpful for understanding what's going on or connecting some dots, but I just don't think it's enough. And I really believe in the power of somatic work,
Mhm.
whether it's breath work, tapping, acupuncture, movement, whatever. I
Mm.
don't care what it is, as long as you're doing something with your body,
Mhm.
because that's where you're holding your emotions, your trauma, your memories. They're actually not up here as much as we think they
Mhm.
might be.
Yes.
Mhm.
Can you take us through kind of an example of, say, a limiting belief and how you would tap to affirm a new belief?
Totally. So the format that I typically use is I'll start by focusing on the problem itself.
Mhm.
So let's say the limiting belief is I'm obsessed with my phone. I can't stop looking at social media.
Mhm.
So you'd start by talking about the fact that you're obsessed with your phone, and you'd talk about maybe the habits around it. Like, it's the first thing I pick up in the morning and it's the last thing I look at night. And then you might talk about how that makes you feel. So it makes me feel drained. It makes me compare myself. It makes me feel exhausted. It makes me feel bad about myself, etc. And then after that, you talk about how even though you're doing this thing and even though you're feeling this way, you deeply and completely love and accept and forgive yourself.
Mm.
And you do a few rounds of reaffirming that to yourself, because once you accept something, then you can change it. But until you accept it and
Mm.
face it, you can't change
Mhm.
anything. So you're accepting what is in order to move on. And then I'll start to move it upwards. So it's almost like a wave. We kind of go down into the depths of the problem. And then I start to pick it up where we talk about, where do I want to go? So
Mm.
you might then say, instead of looking at my phone, I want to journal in the morning, and I want to keep my phone in my bag when I'm with my friends, and I want to spend more time on this or that or whatever.
Mm.
And so that's how you get to implant the new beliefs about where you want to go, what you want to do instead. And it's actually really easy. And people, when they're new to tapping, they're worried about doing it wrong, or what do I
Mhm.
say? The truth is, it doesn't really matter what you say, as long as you're honest with yourself.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Can be complete nonsense, most of it, but as
Mhm.
long as you're being honest and you're forgiving yourself and you're pointing yourself in the direction where you want to go, then you're golden. It's easy.
Mm. Beautiful. And
Yeah.
then you're tapping on the meridian point that is connected to kind of that feeling
You
specifically, or
you
is that
can you can do that. I like to tap through all the points, because
Mhm.
when you tap them in sequence, they're doing various things. They're releasing shame, and they're giving groundedness, and they're bringing up your energy, and they're making you feel motivated and reconnected to yourself. So when you tap all the points in sequence, there's a reason that they're in sequence.
Got it.
So it's side of the hand.
Side of the hand is the first point, yep.
Okay.
And you tap the side of the hand when you're kind of establishing what the issue is. So if you don't totally know what you want to talk about, you tap here until you kind of figure it out. And interestingly, when you tap here, you get clarity really quickly. So that's the first point. And then it's the top of the head, start of the eyebrow, temples, under eye, under nose, under mouth, collarbones, under your armpit where your bra strap would come around, and then your wrists together.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Morning Microdose by Almost 30.
We hope you enjoyed waking up.
As always, we encourage you to take what resonates and leave the rest. If you enjoyed this trip, tune into the full episode on the Almost 30 podcast. All episode information can be found in the show notes.
Make sure to subscribe, and if this becomes a part of your morning routine, be sure to share it with a friend. We have new inspiring doses Monday through Friday. Follow us on Instagram at Morning Microdose, and follow Almost 30 at Almost 30 Podcast.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you in the vortex.